You ever wonder if you did the right thing even after everything worked out? Because I spent 3 weeks after Victor's arrest just sitting in my apartment wondering if I should have just stayed out of it and let Emma handle her own mess. Marcus kept telling me I saved her life, but it didn't feel like saving when she ended up in jail for 5 years and I was the one who handed the evidence to the cops that put her there. The FBI wanted to interview me like 6 times. Each time they asked the same questions about when I found the USB drive and what Richard said when he showed up at my door and whether Emma ever mentioned Victor's name before she disappeared. I told them everything I knew, which wasn't much. Honestly, I barely knew Emma before all this happened, and now I knew way more about her life than I ever wanted to. Richard got 7 years with the possibility of parole after 4 if he kept cooperating with the feds. From what Officer Jackson told me, he was singing like crazy, giving them names and bank account numbers and offshore companies that nobody even knew existed. Victor got 20 years without parole. Apparently, he didn't say a single word during his trial, just sat there in his expensive suit, looking like he was bored at a business meeting while they read off all the lives he'd ruined. Emma got 5 years as an accessory to fraud and obstruction of justice and witness tampering and about 10 other charges I can't even remember. Her lawyer tried to argue she was coerced and scared for her life, which was true, but the prosecutor said she had 8 months to go to the police before she finally disappeared and that she only helped set me up because she thought it would save her brother, who didn't even need saving because he'd already turned himself in. The judge wasn't sympathetic. 3 weeks after the sentencing, I got a letter from Emma's lawyer saying she wanted to see me. At first, I threw it away because what was I supposed to say to her? Congratulations on getting arrested because of evidence I found in your apartment. Marcus said I should go just to get closure. I hate that word closure because it sounds like something a therapist would say, but he was probably right that I needed to hear whatever she wanted to tell me. The jail was in Newark, and it took me an hour to get through security because apparently they don't trust visitors very much, which makes sense considering the people they've got locked up in there. They put me in this visiting room with plastic chairs and tables bolted to the floor and cameras in every corner. After about 10 minutes, a guard brought Emma in wearing an orange jumpsuit that looked 3 sizes too big on her. She looked terrible, and I don't mean that in a judgmental way. I mean, she looked like she'd aged 10 years in 3 weeks, with her hair cut short and no makeup and these dark circles under her eyes that made her look like she hadn't slept since they arrested her. She sat down across from me and just stared at her hands for a while before she said anything.
Thank you for coming. I wasn't sure you would.
I almost didn't.
I don't blame you. I wouldn't want to see me either, after what I did. I just wanted to apologize in person and try to explain why I did what I did, even though I know it won't change anything.
Your lawyer said you were trying to protect Richard, but he'd already turned himself in, so you gave me up for nothing.
I know that now, but I didn't know it then. Victor told me Richard was going to disappear and that the only way to save him was to help them get the USB drive back. He showed me photos of Richard with a gun to his head and told me they'd kill him if I didn't cooperate. I believed him because I'd seen what Victor was capable of, and I knew he wasn't bluffing.
How did you even get involved with Victor in the first place? Because from what the FBI told me, he ran this massive fraud operation for like 15 years, and your brother only worked for him for 2.
Richard met him at some investment conference in Manhattan about 3 years ago, and Victor offered him a job managing accounts for high-net-worth clients, which sounded legitimate at first. Richard didn't know the money was stolen until about 6 months in, when he noticed some transactions that didn't make sense. When he asked Victor about it, Victor threatened his family and said if Richard went to the police, he'd make sure we all disappeared. So Richard kept working for him and kept moving money around and kept pretending everything was fine while he was secretly documenting everything and building a case against Victor. He told me about it 8 months ago and begged me to stay out of it. But I'm his sister, and I couldn't just sit there while he risked his life, so I started taking my own photos and keeping my own records in case something happened to Richard. That's what was on the USB drive. My backup evidence that Richard didn't even know existed because I was trying to protect him the same way he was trying to protect me. I hid it in my apartment and thought nobody would ever find it. But then Victor's people broke in looking for anything Richard might have left behind, and I panicked and disappeared because I thought if they found the drive, they'd kill both of us.
Why didn't you just go to the FBI when you first found out? Why wait 8 months and put yourself in danger?
because Victor has connections everywhere, and Richard was terrified that if we went to the wrong person, the information would get back to Victor before we had any protection. We were trying to figure out who we could trust and how to approach the FBI without getting killed in the process. Then Richard made the decision to turn himself in without telling me, and by the time I found out, it was too late. When Victor figured out Richard had betrayed him, he came after me because he thought I had copies of everything, and he was right. But I didn't want to use them because I still thought I could negotiate my way out of this. I thought if I gave him the drive, he'd let us both go, but that was stupid. Because Victor doesn't let anybody go, he just kills them after he gets what he wants.
So you used me as bait to get the drive back, knowing Victor would be there waiting.
Victor forced me to make that call and told me exactly what to say and where to tell you to meet me. He said if I didn't cooperate, he'd kill Richard, even though Richard was already in FBI custody. I should have known he was lying, but I was so scared I couldn't think straight. I'm sorry, Sarah. I know that doesn't fix anything, but I need you to know I never wanted you involved in this, and if I could go back and do things differently, I would.
The thing is, I don't even blame you for trying to protect your brother, because I probably would have done the same thing if I was in your position. What bothers me is that you had 8 months to figure this out, and instead of going to the police, you just kept collecting evidence and hoping it would somehow protect you, when all it did was make you a bigger target.
You're right, and I know that now. But when you're in the middle of it, you can't see how bad it is, because you're just trying to survive one more day and then another day. And before you know it, 8 months have gone by, and you're in so deep you can't get out. Richard was the brave one who finally decided to end it, even though it meant going to prison. I wish I'd been that brave, but I wasn't.
The FBI told me you're testifying against some of Victor's other associates in exchange for a reduced sentence.
They want me to identify everyone I saw at Victor's office, and everyone Richard mentioned in his notes. In exchange, they might knock 2 years off my sentence. It's not much, but it's something. At least this way maybe I can help take down the rest of Victor's operation.
What happens when you get out?
I have no idea. Probably witness protection if Victor's people are still looking for me. Or maybe I'll just move somewhere far away and start over with a new name. Richard will probably do the same thing when he gets out, and we'll never talk to each other again, because that's safer for both of us.
That's a pretty depressing way to end this.
It is what it is. Honestly, I deserve worse than what I got, so I'm not complaining. I just hope you can forgive me someday, even though I know I don't deserve that either.
I drove home from the jail feeling worse than when I went in because hearing Emma's side of the story didn't make me feel better about what happened. It just made me realize how complicated everything was and how there were no good choices for anyone involved. She wasn't a villain. She was just someone who made bad decisions while trying to protect someone she loved, and now she's paying for it. Marcus met me at my apartment and we ordered pizza, sat on the couch watching some TV and listening to Nightfire stories, because I didn't want to think about Emma or Victor or any of it anymore. He asked me if visiting her helped, and I said I didn't know yet. Some things take time to process, and this was one of those things. 2 months later, I moved to a different building in Brooklyn because I couldn't stand living across from Emma's empty apartment anymore. Every time I walked past her door, I thought about that USB drive hidden in her planter and how finding it changed everything. My new place is smaller and more expensive, but it doesn't have any memories attached to it, which is exactly what I needed. Officer Jackson called me a few weeks after I moved to tell me they'd arrested 3 more people connected to Victor's operation, including one guy who worked at the courthouse, which explained how Victor always seemed to know what the authorities were doing. He said the case was basically closed now, and I probably wouldn't have to testify again unless something unexpected came up. Which was good because I was tired of reliving the whole thing every time someone asked me questions. Marcus and I still hang out like twice a week, and he still jokes about how I almost got us both killed because I couldn't mind my own business. But I can tell he's proud of me even though he won't say it directly. He's right that most people would have just ignored the newspapers piling up outside Emma's door and kept walking. Maybe that would have been easier, but it also would have meant Emma might be dead and Victor would still be out there ruining people's lives. The last time I talked to Officer Jackson, he told me Emma was doing okay in jail and had become some kind of informal counselor for other inmates who needed legal advice or just someone to talk to. He said she'd probably get out early for good behavior and cooperation with the FBI, which seemed fair, considering she helped them take down a major criminal operation even if she did it to save herself. I don't know if I'll ever see Emma again after she gets out, and honestly, I'm not sure I want to because some things are better left in the past. What I do know is that paying attention when something feels wrong isn't always easy and it doesn't always end well, but it's still better than pretending you don't see what's right in front of you. That's what I learned from all this. That caring about people, even when it's inconvenient or scary or dangerous, is what separates us from the people like Victor who only care about themselves. Emma made mistakes, but she cared about her brother enough to risk everything. I made mistakes, but I cared enough about a neighbor I barely knew to get involved when I should have stayed out of it. Maybe that makes us both idiots, or maybe it makes us human, and I'm still figuring out which one it is. Either way, the story's over now. Emma, Victor, and Richard are in jail, and I'm back into my normal boring life where the most exciting thing that happens is deciding what to order for dinner. And you know what? I'm completely fine with that.